So today we're going to talk about your pre-game plan. You know, a lot of times, even myself, I find myself in a situation where I gank for a lane maybe 2 times and we kill the opponent twice, we push their wave, they get denied, but the laner still loses. And then as a jungler, that can be very frustrating. And then you're thinking, wow, you know, I found these opportunities. What went wrong? Like, was a player not good enough? Or what happened? And the player might be a good player, the one that you ganked for. But the thing is that you didn't identify the matchup and what your strong lanes are, what the enemy strong lanes are, what your team goals and what the enemy team goals are. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about right now, which is in your champion select, you're going to think about your pre-game plan. Now, obviously, this gets a little bit distorted with 2v1s, so we're just going to go mostly over 1v1 scenarios and solo queue for that matter. So, the first thing you need to do once you see all 5 champions is identify your team win conditions or your team goals. So, let's say you have a Xerath team composition with a Corki and like a Morgana. Then your team goal is going to be to focus on towers and not so much vision denial, but to get yourself in 5v5 situations and just poke down the enemy and take towers. So right off the bat, you know, okay, we need to have control over blue buff. Is going to be very important. And you don't need much vision denial because you're going to be straighting in the line, so it's going to be better to invest in multiple green wards over pink wards. So that's a rare scenario, but it's there. And then let's say you have another team composition where you have like an Aurelia and then Aurelia Lissandra. Like right off the bat, you know, okay, our goal is going to be to deny the enemy vision and take these really crazy skirmishes in the jungle, preferably, because they're both short range champions. Lissandra kind of short range. I'm not really sure about that one yet. She's kind of both, but you're not going to be wanting to put yourself in that 5v5 situation. So now that you have these 2 different teams, you need to identify. Now, I obviously didn't go over like the full teams, but these are 2 lanes that, for instance, you have Lissandra and Aurelia. Most Lissandra matchups in mid lane are pretty positive. So that for you is already a strong lane. And Aurelia, unless she's playing against something like Renekton or like an... yeah, that's pretty much it. Can have a pretty easy time in the top lane as well. But that still doesn't mean that these matchups are your strong lanes, because they can also be up against really difficult matchups. For instance, Lissandra may find herself up against a Morgana mid lane, and Morgana is going to be pushing all day against Lissandra. So therefore your lane is going to be losing, and it's going to be very difficult to capitalize on it because Morgana's Black Shield makes Lissandra, you know, struggle a little bit. So you know that your mid lane is going to be a weak lane. What I mean by a weak lane also comes into consideration with the jungler. So let's say your jungler with the Lissandra is a Rengar, the enemy's jungler is a Lee Sin. It'll be very rare in a scenario for your weak lane with the jungler to be able to beat an opponent's strong lane with the jungle. So Morgana Lee Sin should be able to easily 2v2 Rengar Lissandra. So you don't want to be putting yourself in a situation where you're going to be facing that 2v2 unexpectedly. Now, this is a little one that I have to expand some more about identifying your team goals and the enemy goals and all that, but I think that one just takes practice and experience and watching videos and all that, because that's mostly coming from playing matchups, knowing how the matchups play out, knowing all the champion abilities. Like, I'm sure any pro player could tell you all the abilities that any champion has, and kind of how they have a pretty good idea as to how they play out and interact with an opposing laner. So that's a pretty crucial part. And once you've learned that, which again I would recommend just come through practice and watching videos of matchups that you're interested in, then you should be able to pretty safely identify team goals. Like for instance, Xerath is pretty easy. Obviously, you just want to be sieging. Or Lysandra, pretty easy. You just want to be team fighting, or skirmishing. You just want to be fighting and not sieging. So you gotta, once you get past that barrier, we can go into the next step of your pre-game planning. Now, once you've considered your strong lanes and your weak lanes, with pushing into consideration, like I mentioned, Morgana, things like that, or Maokai top versus Aurelia. Maokai can push pretty freely against Aurelia. Once you consider that, your goal is going to be to make sure that your weak lanes don't get dove or denied. Because a lot of times your weak lanes are also champions that really rely on their level 6, like say Kassadin top, right? So that lane is not going to do anything pre-6. So you need to make sure that the opposing laner doesn't build up a big wave on Kassadin and then calls the jungler and dives him, because you got to remember that your goal with the weak lane is going to be to protect him from getting dove and denied, which mostly is going to come from thinning out the wave, just showing up, pushing the wave out and letting him have a free recall. That's going to be a pretty big thing, and getting defensive wards to make sure that you don't get dove. Now, because that's your weak lane, the enemy's going to be thinking, hey, this is our strong lane. I want to be using our strong lane to exert pressure on the enemy by going on these tower dives, by denying these big waves, things like that. So there comes a kind of a struggle of power in those lanes. So you need to make sure that you don't waste too much time in the weak lanes and look for fights there, because those are fights that are not only going to be more risky than other fights, but they're also going to be just a lot less likely to give you any rewards in the imminent future. So let's say you have Kassadin top versus an Aurelia or a Gnar. If that Kassadin, if you kill, let's say you kill Gnar twice somehow, your Kassadin is still going to lose lane. He's still going to get pushed in the entire time, because that's just what Gnar does. Gnar is just going to have a lot of magic resist, and Kassadin is going to get pushed in. So ganking that would be a waste of time. Well, he could just farm the tower and kind of take a little bit of the hit early, and then just go from there. But if you have, let's say, an Aurelia versus a Gnar, you kill that Gnar one time, that Aurelia is going to snowball the shit out of Gnar, and Gnar is not going to touch a CS. So that's the difference of helping your weak lanes and your strong lanes out. Now, you mentioned you want to protect your weak lanes from getting dove, and you want to exert a lot of pressure on your strong lanes, which means that you're going to be putting aggressive wards in your strong sides, in the lanes that you want to be able to help you collapse in the jungle if need be. The lanes that you want to be going for the tower dives, things like that. The lanes that you know for a fact 2v2, if you fight, if the enemy jungler shows up and you didn't even expect that, you can win that because you're so strong in the 2v2 compared to them. That's what you want to be doing. And another big thing is that when you go to help out the weak lanes, you don't want to find yourself kind of ganking it without knowing where the enemy jungler is, because, as I mentioned, you're going to lose that 2v2. And if he shows up and you lose that 2v2, you just snowballed in the way that the enemy wanted to snowball. So now his strong lane is going to obliterate your weak lane, and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. So you need to be very careful playing on these the strength of your laners and whatnot. And with the vision, obviously you want to have the vision in the strong sides, and those are the areas that you want to be pushing in for the aggressive wards, so that your lane for the aggressive pink wards, as I want to mention, because those are the areas that the jungler would feel uncomfortable clearing, because he's thinking, what if they collapse on me? It could be dangerous. I can see the ward, the aggressive ward at try, but I don't know where the jungler is, and if I stay around for 5 hits, I might get collapsed on with the pushing laner and the jungler. So they usually just leave it at that if you have a lot of presence, and that's what you want. You want to have these pink wards that get really aggressive in these strong lanes, so that your opponents hesitate in clearing them and they last for longer, and they feel a lot of pressure, then thinking, man, these guys must be so confident that they have the audacity to put pink wards on our side of the map. Like, they want to take over our jungle. They want to make sure that they're starting to push in as quickly as they can. They want to take over this game. And now, as a jungler, if you see that, you're like, shit, man, like, I need to do something about this, because they clearly want to win. So it's a little bit of psychological warfare as well. And yeah, once you choose to help out your strong lane and not help out you help your weak lane out, but in a more defensive approach, you will see a higher success rate in your games. You will, because once your strong lanes get snowballed, the snowball is exponentially stronger than snowballing a lane that has a difficult time applying pressure into the enemy when they have a lead. Like, a Morgana can apply pressure if they get ahead, but in a lot of matchups it's kind of just a farm fest, and if the person dodges the dark binding, it's really not that much. But a LeBlanc can zone out the enemy completely, right? A LeBlanc can two-shot anybody if they get ahead. So just a little bit of food for thoughts. And hopefully you will find yourself in a situation where you're no longer feeling like you help someone out and that there are no returns. This will change that for you, and just really think about what your plan is going to be when you start the game off, and carry that through, and you'll see success. But the most important thing here, I feel like I bring this up very often, is to be flexible with your game plan. You need to be able to change it on the fly. Let's say you have a weak lane, a lane that you deemed weak, but this guy is shitting on the opponent. Go help him out. That just became a strong lane. He's a better player than the other one. He's winning, and he's able to exert pressure. Bam, that's amazing. You have a weak lane that's able to win. Now your strong lanes can like kind of stay even, but you have a lane that was supposed to be losing that's winning really badly. By all means, seize that opportunity. Don't set your eyes just on the game, on the plan that you made like 10 minutes before the game began. Just always be willing to change it and adjust to it. Like, let's say your weak lane got somebody really low. Go for it. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't help these people out. You need to always be flexible and willing to make adjustments to your plan, because in a game like this where there's so many factors constantly changing, flexibility is really probably one of the most important things in the game. So thank you for watching, and feel free to suggest any future videos that you'd like to see. I know I haven't shown any videos for a little bit, but I came back to Canada and I'll be putting these out every day again. So thank you for watching.